Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode one of our Fujitsu Impact series, Driving AI for Real Business Outcomes. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest challenges, moving from AI hype to measurable outcomes. So joining me today are three incredible experts at the forefront of AI innovation. First, we have John Walsh, CTO at Fujitsu Europe. Then we have Aditya Raj, or Addy, as we like to call him, Global Fujitsu Distinguished Engineer and SME for Data and AI, and Dr. Chris Marshall, Vice President at IDC Asia Pacific, leading AI, data, analytics, and industry research. So thank you all for joining us today. All right, so let's get started. Let's start with a myth. If you buy the best AI tech, success is guaranteed. So many believe that buying the most advanced AI technology guarantees success. Chris, from IDC's perspective, how accurate is this belief and what really drives successful AI adoption?
I think success is never guaranteed by anything, really, whether it's with Gen AI or any other technology. I mean, there was that famous MIT report that came out beginning of last year, I guess, that said, misleadingly, I think, that 95% of Gen AI projects were actually failing to deliver any business value. In other words, only 5% delivered that value. But I think a lot of these stories missed the point entirely. That particular report, for example, really highlighted at a very early stage of development, and it emphasized, first of all, the range, the fact that a few companies are making massive successes in terms of their AI adoption, and Gen AI in particular. But it's true that a lot of companies struggle. And one of the things I think we hopefully will talk about today is getting some idea of the differences between those who get it right and those who, maybe struggle a little bit. And I think this is borne out by the data, and it's borne out by practice. And maybe we'll come to that a little bit more in the session.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you, Chris. So that's a very interesting perspective. Well, success clearly isn't just about having the best tech. So today we're going to go and dive deeper into why so many AI projects fall short, and more importantly, what separates the winners from the rest. So we'll explore how strategy, data readiness, and a focus on measurable outcomes can turn AI hype into real business impact. All right, so let's start by looking at the hidden traps. John, you've seen hundreds of AI projects. So what's the number one reason most pilots fail, even with great technology?
Okay, good to see you all. Let me start with debunking the use of the word pilot at the very beginning, right? I dislike this word. Pilot means at some point in the future, you may continue or you may stop. I tend to treat all AI projects in the same way as I treat systems integration projects. You have a clear set of outcomes at the very beginning. You have senior management ownership. You have good governance. And Eddie will talk a little bit about what we're doing from a governance perspective, specifically in the context of AI later in this call. You have a good business case, and you have a very good understanding of the use case where you're going to adopt AI. Let me say at the very outset, good business change is absolutely essential. Yeah. Maybe up to 50% of the cost of an AI project should be spent on actually adoption and good quality business change. Injecting the AI into your work process as opposed to using AI simply as a very smart search tool. Mm-hmm. Data quality, you alluded to this, is important. AI will not fix your data quality issue. Yeah, you need to start with good data quality. Set the expectations correctly. You will not get everything right on day one. Yeah, so it's important with your user population for them to have a good understanding of the road and the roadmap that you're taking. Mm-hmm. Tooling is important, but it is just tooling. Yeah, it's about choosing the right tool for the job that you're trying to achieve. This is what I'll say at the outset.
Well, thanks, John. That's some great insight. But we know this challenge isn't unique to Fujitsu's customers. Chris, IDC's research shows that many pilots stall across industries. So in manufacturing specifically, what do you see as the biggest barrier? Is it technology, culture, or governance?
I think it's funny you bring up the differences between manufacturing and other industries, because we do see that manufacturing is a little bit different to many other industries. I think when it comes to building pilots and having pilots at least have a modicum of success, a lot of the same issues are found across every industries. But manufacturing really is more challenging, I think, when it comes to scaling, particularly Gen AI projects and increasingly agentic AI projects too, because across the board, the challenges like lack of skills, lack of data, etc., choosing the right use cases, these are shared. But when it comes to manufacturing, it's more about alignment with existing operations and existing operational systems, right? So it means that you've got to link with your ERP systems, your MES systems, your PLM, your SCADA, all the bits and pieces that make up a modern manufacturing organization. And this integration usually is jolly difficult, and it's not very sexy, frankly. And the COEs that usually focus on AI deployment, they struggle with exactly this sort of thing. It's not something that I think a lot of the traditional data engineers, AI engineers, have really the skills to actually do that. And I think that means also we've got to cut across IT and OT, the operational technology and the IT. And of course, that's always been a challenge in manufacturing, precisely because they tend to be very monolithic. They're often air-gapped between, IT and OT. They're not particularly flexible and easy to integrate. And moreover, building on something that John mentioned, there's the business change that needs to happen on the back of AI deployment, particularly when you're scaling. And unless you actually put the effort into making the business process change, to respond, especially for Gen AI and agentic AI, you're almost doomed to failure before you start. So I think that's, again, echoing what John said a little bit. It's this idea of sort of going beyond pilots and instead treating AI as sort of an extension of traditional operational management projects. And I think that's usually requires commitment that, frankly, manufacturing firms struggle to get. So,
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Chris. Well, that really highlights the complex integration, how complex it can be to integrate into manufacturing. So it's not just about deploying AI, it's about embedding it into the very fabric of enterprise systems. And that brings us to the critical question. So, John, from your experience, is technology ever enough? And what's the real differentiator?
No, technology is not enough. And I'll give you two examples. And I'll pick them from manufacturing space. I'm working with two companies at the moment. One is a very, very large Japanese electronics manufacturer, global manufacturer. The second one is a manufacturer specifically working in the field of heat exchangers, underfloor heating, data center air conditioning, etc. And it's funny, the industries are slightly different. The focus of the market is slightly different, etc. But the issues and the level of attention to detail is almost identical in both cases. So yes, it's important to get the tooling right. And Chris alluded to something there very interesting: OT, operational technology, which is normally the crown jewels in manufacturing. Yeah, and it tends to be air gapped, etc., or very well protected. It's possible now, of course, to get tooling, things like IoTT, IO, Internet of Things, telemetry transfer, which allow you to converse directly with IoT devices, etc. And part of that is what we're doing in one of these particular customers, etc. So some of the technical barriers have been broken down. But guess what? The really important thing here, and I'll go back to it again, is the nature of the business change. It's about changing the processes. So in the case of the first, the electronics manufacturer, we're actually saving them about $10 million per year. That's the actual factual outcome of what we're doing as a result of applying the AI technology. But the big part of that was changing the workflow, the work processes, how logistics was effectively managed in the company, and what part and what role AI would place. In the second instance, we're doing a job for the second company. That second company, in this case, it's about field engineering, and it's about having field engineers where they're spending multiple millions per year on field engineering and ensuring that the field engineers have the right information in the right context to a very, very high level of precision. But guess what? It's a combination of two things. One, choice of the tool, but two, changing the way the field engineers are actually doing their work. Yeah, okay. We get the maximum benefit from AI.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Those are very powerful examples. And it really does show that technology isn't enough. So, Chris, from your persona based research, how critical is a C suite sponsorship for AI success? And can you share some data points that proves leadership does make a difference?
Sure. I mean, across all industries, we see that companies with sort of a strong C-suite sponsorship and coordination of AI, particularly between the CIO and the CFO and the CEO, are twice as likely to move beyond Gen AI pilot projects and in other words, trying to scale. And of course, this means not just them talking to each other, it means joint funding, it means shared governance, it means alignment with larger strategic initiatives and so on. But we also see that, organizations that have this sort of constant executive engagement, not just from the IT department, but from the lines of business as well, and maybe functional areas too in some cases, and sort of cross-functional steering committees that actually manage the projects are much more likely to scale AI and realize that business value. And obviously, that's one reason why a lot of projects fail, as we've already highlighted. In manufacturing, it's a little bit different because obviously the COO tends to be much more involved. And partly this is because, as we mentioned, the IT/OT gap, but also I think the COO needs to step up and actually not leave it to the CIO and actually take AI on board as part of their agenda and aggressively coordinate across IT and OT. And without this sort of coordination, the best technology is not going to deliver much in the way of measurable outcomes. And we see that, we've got those digital leaders that actually have constant executive engagement with the CIO and the COO on Gen AI are much more likely, in fact, 76% more likely to use Gen AI in production. So I think the statistics are pretty compelling, quite honestly, that a high degree of coordination for enterprise projects, treating AI as an enterprise project is going to be, absolute necessity for AI success.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Chris. So that really underscores how leadership alignment can make or break AI success. But even with strong sponsorship, there's another critical piece that often gets overlooked. So my next question here is for Addie. What's the necessary component or secret ingredient behind every successful AI project?
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks for the question. In my opinion, the secret is a data foundation. So then once you have the foundation, you put the AI stack on top. So we see this in our own transformation. One Data is our enterprise data backbone, a governed multi-region platform that turns fragmented data into shared timely insight. So it's why we can deliver production grade AI and operational dashboards quickly because the data plumbing is already standardized, secure, and accessible. So that data discipline cut time to insight and make downstream AI deployment predictable. So let me give you an example from the customer side. The difference is visible in production. So we have a AI project going on with Rehau Industries, a global manufacturer of polymer-based solution that is profile windows interiors. Our AI based quality inspection solution moved from manual spot checks to continuous inline inspection and achieved 99.32% of defect detection on test data. It was made possible because imagining pipelines and metadata were standardized and governed. Let me give you another example. For secured generative AI at scale, we deploy Takane, which is our Japanese enterprise LLM, which we have developed jointly with Cohere and delivered through Fujitsu AI platform called Kojuchi. It is designed for private cloud and RAG enhanced, retrieval augmented generation enhanced use, so customers can unlock value while keeping data sovereign and compliant.
Mhm.
And when knowledge lives across procedures, logs, manuals, and videos, our Fujitsu Knowledge Graph Enhanced RAG expands this retrievable context from millions to even more than 10 millions of tokens and add provenance. So responses are grounded, they are explainable, and they are auditable, which is crucial for regulated operation. So bottom line, clean, well-governed, connected data is the engine, I'll say, and private, trustworthy large language models and KGRAG are the transmission that turns it into a business motion. So think of data as what makes AI possible, and maturity as the ladder you climb. So data ready, then you become AI ready, AI enabled, AI scaled, and AI first.
Hmm.
Data ready makes AI possible, AI ready makes value likely, and AI enabled proves that value. And then you have the AI scale, which is operationalizing it, and AI first makes it continuous. That's what I would say. So data is at the foundation of everything.
Well, thank you, Eddie. Well, that really brings the whole data story to life. So, clean, connected, and governed data clearly sets the stage for everything else. Um, Chris, IDC's research also points to data as the cornerstone of AI success. So, from your perspective, what's the most common data challenges manufacturers face, and how does that impact ROI?
I think it's worth pointing out there that an awful lot of AI projects, even in manufacturing firms, are actually quite functional projects, and frankly, the data challenges are fairly straightforward, quite honestly. But when it comes to operational systems, i.e., non-functional lines of business kind of activities that the manufacturers engaged in, the biggest challenge is kind of builds on what we've already talked about. It's this siloed operational data. And we see, something like nearly half of manufacturers already using data management platforms to sort of try to integrate or across different OT data that's currently probably trapped in different legacy systems. But the reality is that without that clean data, AI systems, AI models are going to struggle to deliver sort of any sort of accuracy, and the performance in that ROI is likely to suffer as well. So one of the things that we're seeing more and more is the need for enterprise data models, for example, metadata, governance, interoperability of systems. These things are kind of investments that manufacturers haven't really made in the past, but have to start making aggressively now. Perhaps the most common thing other than the integration side is actually data quality. And something like 56% of organizations across all industries rank data quality improvement as their top data issue for AI. But very close behind, and it's higher, I think, in manufacturing, is the 55% of respondents who tell us that siloed data is the biggest source of that data quality problem, followed by storage problems and outdated data and inaccurate data. So this points, again, I think it points the way to realize that data quality is not a nice to have. It's not something we can roll in after the fact, after we've already deployed AI. No, it's kind of got to be there up front. You've got to prioritize data quality management in all its forms: accuracy, completeness, timeliness, consistency, provenance, all these good things, and data integration, if you want to have much hope of actually making AI a success in a large manufacturing organization today.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thanks, Chris. So let's take this to the next step. Hattie, how do you go from vision to value? So essentially, how do you turn strategy into measurable outcomes?
Yeah, I think I have a screen first to show, and then I can go through it. So maybe if you can bring up, yeah. So this is our enterprise execution and government suite. So how we turn switches that makes the difference. First, you will see an end-to-end visibility. That is, we connect vision to live delivery with a single view of business alignment. So data readiness, engineering, deployment, everything comes together. So on a shop floor or a factory floor, our Fujitsu intelligent dashboard can give you a real-time view of quality, capacity, availability, and one-click root cause, so teams can act fast and not just watch graphs on the screen. Then you have the built-in governance and accountability. So governance isn't an afterthought, as you have been listening today. It's at Fujitsu, AI commitment embeds ethics, auditability, risk controls from day one. So scaling, it speeds up because trust and compliance are already in place. Then you have real-time execution status. We integrate fragmented, as you heard, ERP, MES, PLM that Chris was mentioning, using all this data. Right now, we have something with, let's say, Palantir that we have with Fujitsu Yuan's offering that you can already have access and you have everything in one place. And then when generative AI is needed, we deploy Takane. As I already said, it's our own large language model based on Japanese language. So, and using our Kojuchi platform, our AI platform called Kojuchi, in private environment with knowledge knowledge graphs, RAG for provenance. So that means faster decision with data staying sovereign. And then you have actionable, something actionable, not just aspirational. So results are tied to owners and business impact. In production, continuous inline inspection, as I already gave an example, more than 99% of defection detection for Rehau, and AI assisted NDT, that is non-destructive testing, ultrasonic scan data for wind turbines that we did for Siemens Gamesa, which reduced the cut inspection time by 75%. So quality going up, time going down, and costs are visible on the dashboard. So bottom line being strategy becomes measurable. The strategy becomes measurable outcomes when visibility, governance, real-time status, and action routing are all in one place. So
Mhm.
what leaders will see is basically a simple role-based dashboard for KPI. You have ownership and closed loop workflows. So it's clarity over complexity. So remember what I said before: AI readiness, AI enabled, AI scaled, and AI first. Now this all coming together is what we call AI native, meaning we don't add AI later. We design with AI first principles, govern data, private LLM, KG-RAG, human in the loop, and observability as standard. So that's how strategy becomes continuous, measurable outcomes. And I always say strategy without execution is hallucination. And this is how we make success operational at Fujitsu.
Mhm. Okay,
Back to
thank
you,
you, Adi.
Carlos.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown of how strategy becomes measurable outcomes. And it really connects to something that ITC emphasizes, which is aligning AI initiatives with business KPIs. Chris, IDC talks about mapping KPIs to things like overall equipment effectiveness and orders delivered on time in full. Why is this alignment so important, and what does IDC recommend for tracking success?
Well, I think it's important to realize that AI is a little bit different to most software projects, right? Usually the value is not created all at once at the very beginning and then consistently delivered forever. It doesn't work that way. There's a learning process, there's a scaling process. That inevitably, you're not going to see all the benefits up front. And it's only when you understand that scaling and realize that many of the benefits that will lead to business value, might not be apparent immediately. And this is one of the things I think that the MIT study that we mentioned earlier made a mistake about. You've got to have a hierarchy of metrics that support ultimately financial metrics, certainly, but there's many non-financial metrics that may be part of that. We've talked about a few. It may be things like productivity gains. It may be customer satisfaction. It might be risk reduction. It may be efficiency of the underlying process. These are qualitative and quantitative metrics, and it's only when you start to think about the combination and how they fit together, a bit like the old sort of balanced scorecard idea, that you can actually understand how slowly AI is going to improve the larger process, particularly in manufacturing systems. In plant operations, you've got things like OEE, overall equipment effectiveness, cycle time, scrap rates, and the like. And these sort of dashboards can help you understand how even quite early stage pilots can improve these lower level metrics that eventually in time will develop as training improves, as the data quality improves, as business processes change, will lead to improvements in financial performance across the board. And of course, having those KPIs in place also means that somebody's actually monitoring them. And that usually means some sort of COE or exec steering committee that's looking over the project to make sure that, it's actually aligned with what they think it should be. And sometimes making course corrections as a result of that. So it's almost echoing, again, something that John said at the very beginning, that it's about disciplined enterprise management of AI projects as not being special, but rather just like any other big enterprise project that needs to be cared for and nurtured. And the metrics are just one way of doing that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris. All right. So as we're arriving here at the end of our segment, let's just quickly shift gears and have a little fun with the rapid fire round. So true or false? I just want you to scream out the answers to the following comments. All right. AI adoption is all about technology.
False.
Okay. You need perfect data to start.
Not perfect, but good data.
Yeah, agreed.
And governance slows down innovation.
No.
On the contrary, governance guarantees that innovation will produce an outcome.
Okay. Most AI projects fail because of resistance to change.
Yes, true.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. More than
Healthcare is
50%
very
of them
important.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so let's wrap up with three playbook points for success in AI adoption. So, one, start with a business problem, not a tech wish list. Two, build a culture of ownership and governance. And three, invest in data readiness and operational dashboards. Um, everybody in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Good
All right, so
start. Yeah.
John, just to wrap things up with you, if you had to give one essential guidance for companies moving from hype to measurable outcomes, what would it be?
Um, okay, we've emphasized the governance point. I think from my perspective, it's get the first use case right. All right, spend time on the actual use case itself. And when I say that, I mean not only the use case, but understanding the underpinning data, and treat it like a systems integration project. Give it the emphasis it needs. Yeah. If you were
Mhm.
doing an ER project or a HR project, you would spend a lot of time at the enterprise level getting it right. Apply the same logic and techniques here.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. All right, everybody. And that wraps up our session for today. Thank you so much to our wonderful speakers and to our audience. If you'd like to dive deeper into this topic, simply scan the QR code you're about to see on screen now. We'll also share the link below. There you'll find demos, insight papers, and ways to connect with our team. You can also subscribe to our series to get notified about upcoming episodes. And great news, our speakers will be available right here within the next 20 minutes to answer all of your questions live in the chat. And if you found this conversation valuable, please share it within your network and let's keep the conversation going. All right. And before we leave, one final thought. Would you trust AI for business critical decisions? Well, join us for episode 2, Trustworthy AI, as we explore this question further in depth. All right, everybody. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.